Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Cost Control. And I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. Uh, we're going to go through the slides talking about Chapter 11, mostly dealing with security issues. But I've got a guest here. I've got Dr. Mosley,
Hey,
who he's in the hospitality department, and he's actually taught cost control longer than I have. And I just thought it might be fun for you guys to get a different voice in here. So he and I are going to do this as a team today, and we're going to take you through some cost control stuff. Okay, and like I said, here it says maintaining and improving the revenue control system. But control is always things that we can measure, and really, what we're talking about here is we want to make sure that that we're really concerned with security more than anything, about the money not disappearing.
yeah, I don't understand why we would care so much about our money just disappearing. I mean, you know,
It's not like our employees ever steal from us, is it, Matt?
no, I mean, you can always entrust employees to never steal. I mean, why would they ever take anything from us ever? I don't,
Yeah, and the
I don't
guests
know.
don't steal, do they?
No. Don't mind those salt shakers that are logo branded on my coffee table. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I used to have a bunch of shot glasses.
I may have a few Perkins coffee mugs in my house still, but I can neither confirm nor deny how those got there. So,
But today we're going to be talking mostly about controlling the money.
yeah.
So bear with us and we'll get started. So we're going to talk about revenue security. That is the money. And we're going to talk about internally and externally. So our employees and our guests. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about, creating a system to try and head this off as much as possible.
Excellent.
All right. So what are we talking about here? Sometimes we make mistakes. So one of the things that I've stressed to you is that we use the uniform system of accounts for restaurants. And the reason we do that is so that anybody can look at it and understand what's going on. That helps prevent mistakes. When you have a standardized way of accounting that everyone understands, right off the bat, there are fewer mistakes. And then we're going to, so outside of mistakes, bad ordering, bad accounting, things like that, we're also going to talk about theft. So we're going to talk about by our guests and by our employees. And the simplest, the most basic form of revenue security, and the one that we always practice in a restaurant, is that we just match our products with the funds that we receive. So, and what this means in a restaurant is at the end of the night, you sit down and you reconcile. It's like, these are all my tickets. This is all my money. Do they match?
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, what else do we need to do? We need to sit there and every now and then do a thorough inventory to make sure that not just the money matches the receipts, but what we have used up matches up with what our system says. So we make sure we keep track of waste and everything else in case an employee may or may not be selling something on the side and just not recording it down at all. So.
I can tell you right now that if I were an employee, of a large restaurant chain, you could probably make a lot of money selling toilet paper right now.
What else are you supposed to do in a crappy situation? Am I right?
Yeah. Okay, so here we have, our what the book labels a sales record. What it's showing us is how many we've sold and how much money and what the total sales are. So this is the basic tool that we're going to use. Is something like this. I have sold this many items. I should have this much money. Now, if I have sold 100 items or 200 items here, I should have this amount of money in the drawer. And if I don't, something has happened. So that's the most basic level of revenue control right there is just that reconciliation between, well, I should have this amount according to what I've sold, and this is how much is in the drawer. And if the drawer doesn't match my records, then I need to, as a manager, those are the things I start looking at.
Exactly. And this is why you also make sure that at the beginning of each shift, the drawer is at a specific amount each and every time, whether it's $100 or $200 in change and bills. You make sure that each shift starts off the same, so you have that consistency and you know exactly where things went wrong.
Yeah, and you have the revenue control. It's like, that's why you don't share a drawer, however you're doing your money, or you don't share a key to the POS system or whatever. Because if I have 2, 3, 4, 5 people using the same drawer, there's no way for me to tell who is responsible, who may have lost it or may have stolen something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the effective revenue security system. So this is what I talked about with the reconciliation. So these 5 things, this is it. Documented product requests, issues, products issued. So if someone in the kitchen asks for something, like they go and say, hey, I need a case of steak, were they given a case of steak? And then the product issued, whatever was given to the person in the kitchen matches what the guest was charged for. And so, like, if I have 10 steaks that are missing, from the kitchen now, were there 10 steaks sold? Then total charges, the amount of tickets that came in for those 10 steaks. Do I have a receipt for 10 steaks that were sold to a guest? And if I have 10 receipts for steaks that were sold to guests, does that match the amount that was deposited in the bank? That I took in $100 and I put $100 in the bank. And then if the deposits I put in the bank, does that match the amount of money the bank says I have? And this is the process. It's just, if I issue this, I should get this in return. And you check and you make sure that those things match.
So this is just basic accounting for anybody who's paying attention. It's checks and balances. So it's credits and debits. So if you issue something, it's got to be taken out of somewhere else, and it's got to match up on both sides of the ledger. Otherwise, there's a problem.
Right. And as a manager, that's what you look for. Like the management by exception, we're looking for, wait, these 2 things don't match. Well, as a manager, that's where you should look. You don't, if the things line up, then, all you do is you just go in and you say, well, this matches, this matches, this matches. What you're looking for are those areas where they don't match, because as a manager, that's where you need to concentrate your time.
Now, where do you think that the most of the issue is going to come from here? Like, where are some key trouble points that we need to really be worried about in these 5 steps?
Well, at each of them, there is potential. Realistically, most of the problems, and this always hurts me to say it, but most of the time when we talk about theft and pilferage, it's coming from employees.
Yeah.
It is things disappearing out of the storeroom. It is people adding something onto a check and pocketing cash. It is people taking money out of the cash register. It's things like that.
I mean, with bars, it's even more, obvious, where there's a lot more cash going on in a bar type situation, where they take the $5 for the drink and they just pocket it. They never register it at all. But, if you notice that your employees having a lot of parties at their house and they're having steak, grill outs, and the boxes start to look a little familiar, you might want to do some reconciliation there.
Yeah, you just have to check.
Yeah.
So let's start going through some of these. So I said that most of that occurs is happening internally. It's your employees doing it, but not always. Like the most basic level out there for external threats from your guests is if somebody doesn't pay. So like if somebody walks or skips on a bill, the dine and dash, that is right there. That's the first security question. They're the first real concern is, well, I need to make sure that my guests pay me before they leave.
And the secret here
and we
is
design restaurants to help assure this, that you don't have the cash register immediately. You put the cash register so that the guest has to walk past it to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Yeah. Now, I always found the key to a successful dine and dash is to make sure your shoes are tied properly and your keys are in hand.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I mean, but and sometimes you got to be able to recognize when it is maybe a dine and dash. Big parties, you're going to have more issues with than almost the individual diners here. And some of that's just unintentional dining and dashing. There may be some confusion in between with all the different checks and everything on who is responsible for what. So,
yeah. So, that's just one level right there, is just to design your restaurant so it's hard for them to skip out without paying, and to train servers to be aware. People get up and go to the restroom. That's another reason, like having the restrooms near the exits, again, not a great idea, because if you can avoid it, because the people get up, they go to the restroom, and that's when they're going to make the move outside.
Yeah. Oh, I just got to go wash my hands before and they're gone.
Yeah. And things like, if to look for, and someone who's going to dine and dash, how it can happen. It's like, if I'm going to dine and dash and I know that you're paying attention, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to order a dessert. And then, it's like, oh, I'm going to order my dessert, get up and go to the bathroom. And so like, oh, they're not done eating yet.
Yeah, exactly. But you also need to just pay attention to details about the person, right? As a server, you should be paying attention to your customers anyways. And it's going to happen to you. It's just going to happen. But if you do recognize somebody and they come in often, just
and I'm going to throw out my personal opinion here.
Yeah.
And this is not part of the class. This is just personal opinion. But if you're a manager and you make your employees responsible, or they are financially responsible for someone who dines and dashes, you're an asshole.
Oh, 100%. I mean, to sit there and put the financial onus on them. Now, if it's found out to be that they were helping their friends dine and dash, that's when you go the legal route. But in normal day situations, to make a server who is making under minimum wage before tips, by the way, to cover it, that's just kind of a
jerk move.
Yeah. And some of these are usually on like a bigger bill anyways, that people will run up the bill knowing that they're going to try to skip out on. Yeah. So that can completely wreck a server's night and week. And
that's just a personal opinion. That's not in the book. Don't do that.
Yeah. You're not going to keep your quality employees by having them be underneath financial threat here.
Yeah. Okay, here are some steps that you can take to try and reduce the likelihood of a guest skipping out on you.
That's a little different than my typical 12-step program there, Robbie.
So. Things like for the guests that you want to have the server present the bill as soon as the guests are done, because again, you don't want them sitting there waiting. So you present the bill as soon as they're done, because, there is that thing of like, I've been sitting here 10 minutes and you're just increasing the likelihood there. Have the cashier be visible at all times. Instruct the servers to be timely. Train the employees to look at the exits. Have the employees tell managers immediately when it happens. Have the manager deal with the problem. If there is an incident, if you do have a guest skip, what sort of information do you need to gather on them? The number of guests involved, the amount of the bill. You try and describe the guests, if you can know what kind of car they were driving, when it happened, and then notify the police. These are all things that I won't say common sense, but these are the things that the manager and the employee should be trained to do.
Well, if you do have a cashier and they notice somebody just walking out, going to be a little bit more obvious for them. A server tends to have multiple tables going on and, many plates to sit there and balance. Hopefully they notice right away when they get up and out, but it's also on everybody to just kind of know the signs and
Right.
pay attention.
So some of the other things that I find this slide to be kind of funny because the first one is like being on the lookout for counterfeit money or bad checks. So counterfeit money, every time you go, you see the people with the markers that they write on the $20 bill to make sure that it's real. So that's the effort that we make for counterfeit money. Bad checks, unless it's probably your great grandmother, I don't know who's paying for a meal with a check.
Oh, I remember the wall of shame with people who wrote bad checks, where it was just, and sometimes it would have the Polaroid of the picture of the person, do not accept checks, because it may seem very distant and prehistoric for some of our students, Robbie, but there was a time when you couldn't use credit cards through drive-thrus at any of the fast food places.
Right. And there was a physical machine with a carbon copy.
Yeah. And so a carbon copy of your thing, which also led to the chance of your credit card information being stolen, because they could just call up and give out that information.
Yeah.
Bad checks, I mean, if they bounce, you're going to have a system in place, but again, it's going to be your great grandmother or something of that nature.
Little thing here, difference between credit cards and debit cards. Just your debit card is connected to your checking or possibly your savings account, where the credit card is actually a credit line. They offer different types of legal protection. So that's the important thing to remember about those two, is you're actually legally more protected with purchases made on a credit card than a debit card. So just that's the only difference there that really matters.
Yeah. And that's just educating you as well as your, if you have a credit card, be responsible with it. Try to pay it off at the end of each month. Don't use it more than your means, but it does give you a little bit of protection sometimes.
So as a restaurant, when you take credit cards or debit cards, you don't get the money immediately. You get what's called an electronic funds transfer. So the credit card company sends the money to your bank after they've pulled out all their fees. So when you use debit cards or credit cards as a restaurant, you're actually paying for that convenience.
And that includes the little square thing that people have with their phones that gets charged. So every time that you pay somebody with that, you should be cognizant when you're pricing stuff out to have a buffer in there to make sure that your fees are going to be covered as well, so that way you're still making money.
Yeah, because imagine if you're having to pay 1% of all credit card transactions, you need to account for that.
Yeah, it adds up very quickly.
Okay.
Oh yeah, if you agree to accept checks.
Yeah,
I don't see too many places anymore. I think in town it's maybe Twin Oaks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about accepting checks. It's not relevant anymore. So
no.
Maybe I need to get a newer book.
Well, I still see people using checks at like Harris Teeter and stuff, and you always regret that line. That's the one I usually stand in. So if you see me at the grocery store, do not stand behind me unless I'm the only person there. Okay.
All right. Now, if for the students, if you'll notice in this slide, there's a link where it says Quick Change Artist. I want you to go in and watch this video. It's 6 minutes long, and it's a pretty entertaining guy. He used to run a channel on YouTube called Scam School, where he explained to you how different social engineering scams work. And so this is one where he goes in and does a quick change in a bar and shows you how it works. So this is, you go in and as part of the scam, a good scam, it doesn't look like anything's going on, but he's providing just enough distraction in the question he's asking and how he's asking for the scam that the cashier doesn't catch what's going on, and he's able to get more money back than he was due. And so that's how quick change situations work, is that we're doing something to confuse the cashier. So sometimes it'll be two people working together. So the first person will come in and get a transaction, and then they'll step away. And the second person goes in and they do their transaction. Then the first person comes back and says, "Oh, wait, you gave me the wrong change," while the drawer is open. "Hey, can you just give me $2?" And so then you're distracted and the drawer is open and you don't know which transaction you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So the appropriate, there are some appropriate ways to do with this. Probably the most basic one is you do one transaction at a time. So once the drawer is open, if someone comes back and says, "Hey, can you do this?" It's like, let me close out this transaction, and then you start the next transaction. And ultimately, if you get in a situation where someone's saying, "Hey, you owe me more change," and you're quite confident you don't, the appropriate response: stop and count the drawer if you have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Get a second person over there to sit there and help reduce the odds that they're going to pull a quick one over you. And they are going to try to do it at a bar is
You're gonna do it when
one of the
you're busy,
most
when you're
common
distracted.
places. Yeah, exactly. Where you got everything going on and they don't expect you to stop and take the time to call them out on their thing or to pay attention.
"Hey, give me my change. What are you, stupid? Come on, I'm in a hurry. Come on. Hey, you're holding me up. I'm trying to get out of here." I'm going to complain to your manager. They're going to do things like that to fluster you while they're doing it.
Yeah.
So watch the video. It's good. It's only 6 minutes, and it's a good illustration of how quick change works.
Yeah.
So internal threats, things that your servers, your cooks that are going to do. There are a lot of different ways that money disappears at a restaurant. So, and on a later slide, we'll go through some of the examples as far as like using the same check twice, or not ringing things up and collecting money. It's a lot easier to do these things with cash than it is with credit cards. But even with credit cards, there are ways that your employees can discover to try and steal money, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Well, with credit cards, it's a whole nother thing. It's not necessarily your money that they might be stealing either.
Right.
And I'm not sure if we come into that or not. So
yeah, we will.
I'll hold off. Okay.
Okay. So, things like the server can misrepresent the amount they charge the guest. So it could be as simple as they ring in something that the guest didn't order. Maybe they're doing that to push up the check average so they get a bigger tip. Or they charge the guest for something they didn't order, like a dessert. They get paid for it. Then they void the dessert off because it was never served, and they pocket the difference.
Yeah.
Let's see. Always for every sale, you need a guest check. This is my policy in as a chef when I'm in a restaurant, is I make nothing without a ticket. You come back, the server says, "Hey, I need a hamburger on the fly." It's like, where's my ticket?
Yeah. Yeah, that hamburger is not going to fly until I got my piece of paper in my hand. Okay.
Yeah, I know you've got to get, but I need a ticket. I'm not making something and sending it out without a record, because you can take that hamburger out, you present it to the guests, they pay you, cash or whatever, you pocket the money, and there's no record of that hamburger going until the end of the month when I do inventory and I'm short.
Now, this isn't saying that you don't have like people who pair up sometimes. I don't want you to sit here and be like every single one of your employees is trying to rip you off.
Right.
But if you start noticing discrepancies in your inventory and everything else, you need to start just paying a little bit more attention and trying to, it might be you end up doing inventory after each day when everybody's gone home to try to figure out what day and narrow it down from there to figure out where the discrepancies lie.
And that's what I've said this whole class about cost control, is that, as a manager, you have so many tasks you're responsible for, so many things that you have to do, that all these tools in this class just kind of help you focus. It's like, where do I need to spend my attention? Because you only have so much time and so much energy. Yeah. So this just kind of helps guide you in the right direction.
Exactly.
If you use paper checks, if you in a very old school operation where orders are written down and handed to the, handed into the kitchen on a piece of paper, not entered into a POS, you need to keep track of those things, and you need to store them or destroy them, the paper tickets, whatever your policy is. Because if you don't, what's possible is that ticket gets put out twice. I have an old ticket. I'm a server. I have an old ticket from a previous day. I use that one to get the guest to pay that ticket. I never write it down, put it in the system. There's no record of it. I get to keep the money.
Well, exactly. In 2020, it's the technology and everything's out there so much that it helps reduce, but people will find a way. So keeping current on potential weak spots and being on the lookout for it is pretty important.
Yeah. So what we want to do is, so what we're trying to avoid is the server collecting money and keeping it. And so what we always want to do is have this pre-check, post-check system. Is like, if we have physical checks, what checks were a server given, and were they accounted for at the end of the evening? That's it. Let's see, the workstation. This is basically, we're talking about where the POS system is located, the point of sale system. I always get in trouble when I talk about POS in the class because
because I had a POS car at one point.
Yeah.
Well, I've had several POS cars, to be honest. Oh, not point of sale. Yeah, sorry.
But the point of sale, a good point of sale system is going to eliminate a lot of these problems. It's going to make it harder for a server or an employee to steal because it's going to keep records. It's going to keep track of everything. And so rather than a physical ticket that is written down, that in order for a ticket to go to the kitchen or to the screen or however the order is transmitted to the kitchen, they're going to have to enter it into the system. So there will be a record.
Well, and not just that, but they're going to be using either whatever system you're going to have in place so that you can identify who exactly put it in, whether it's their card, a PIN that they use. But you come into a problem then with PINs or cards even, where somebody might be like, oh, I misplaced mine. Can I use yours?
Right.
So. Where there's a will, there's a way. Am I right,
That's
Robbie?
the truth. It's like someone will figure it out.
Yeah.
So, again, all these systems, there's potential for fraud. So some of the ways, that fraud happens is that the cashier can collect can collect payment from the guest, but then destroy the check, if there's no other record of a sale. Or if they collect payment for a check and then destroy the check, or whatever, in any way they don't enter the check into the system, or they delete it from the system.
Yeah. Well, in like the second point there, where they take the money, everything from the customer standpoint looks completely legit, but they just end up not finishing it off. So that way
they never close it out.
Oh, well, somebody must have dined and dashed. I don't know who,
Yeah, they never close it out. And then so talking about closing out, open checks are those that have something's been issued from the kitchen, but it hasn't been added to the sales yet. So that's what we're talking about. They don't close out the ticket, is that the food has been made, the food has been sent out to the guest. Maybe the money's been collected, but it's not reflected in your sales totals yet because it has been marked as collected.
Yeah.
And so that is, that area, that's where you want to look. That's the first place you want to look if you're having money disappear. Let's see. Other ways that your employees could be stealing from you.
Or just stealing from your guests, which in turn actually steals from you. I don't know if anybody remembers, but it wasn't that long ago. Oh, wait, it wasn't here. Back in West Lafayette in Indiana, there was a McDonald's employee who worked the drive-thru. and they just had a little skimmer. Now, a skimmer can be just right there in the palm of your hand. And what they did is they just swiped the guest credit card from on their palm, but they also paid McDonald's, right? They still swiped it there. And then later they took the data from that skimmer and they sold those credit card numbers. And, you know, some people who had debit cards, where we were talking about earlier, you know, had a little bit more trouble recovering their money versus those that had credit cards. Sorry.
So, you know, one of the techniques here that can happen is that we'll charge a guest for an item that's not purchased. So imagine it's a night out at a bar, and like, did they order 5 beers? Did they order 6 beers? And like this is a good example because the person who's been served 5 or 6 beers, they may not remember. And are they going to catch it and say, no, it's supposed to be, you know, $24, not $30 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, they just get handed the receipt at the end of the night. And if they've been overserved, which we shouldn't based on dram shop laws, I'm sure you know, it's not exactly, you know, implausible that they'll just pay for it. I cannot confirm nor deny that I may have bought an extra round of shots that I never remembered, right?
Yeah.
But I'd just be like, well, that looks right. I might have. I've been here a long time, right?
But imagine also just in a restaurant. Let's say that you've got a 12 top. You're buying, you know, you're paying for a party. You've got 12 people sitting there. Do you know? Did this person order dessert? Did that person have 2 drinks? It's pretty easy to pad out a bill that way.
Yeah, and that part of that padding, now it may benefit the restaurant some, but the server's probably hoping that it's going to benefit them by raising the tip amount based on the average percentage that people tip.
Right.
And with a 12 top, it's usually an automatic like 20% gratuity thrown on there.
So other things, change the total on a credit card after the guest has left. So we add additional items, or we change the amount of the tip. You know, you leave a $5 tip, I write a little 1 in front of it, make it a $15 tip.
Yeah. And that's a lot more common than some people think. So as a guest, I mean, we train our guests to, you know, make sure they write down or whatever they have. That's why we have the guest copy and the merchant copy. Recently, it's the electronic signing and tipping, which has helped a little bit. But if the guest doesn't know what they're paying for, they can still get overcharged.
It's, you know, with an electronic system, it's hard to misadd things. But, you know, if you're doing it by hand, it's possible. Shortchanging guests, that's entirely possible. It's like they pay you, they're due back $15 and change, and you give them $14 back and keep $1. You know, it's like.
Yeah, I actually, the electronic thing, if the guest is not familiar with how your system works, so if you have it where normally you hand it to the guest and they select the tip amount, and if the server is suddenly keeping it and then selecting the tip amount and just giving it to you to sign, that's a red flag, right? So the managers need to be watching out for some of these interactions where it can add up pretty quickly, where the guest might be like, oh, I didn't tip, right? Or, you know, that type of stuff might bring up something for you to sit there and start paying attention.
Yeah. And the last, you know, another one here is charging higher prices. Now, charging higher prices in an electronic system is going to be difficult. You know, it's hard to physically change the price. But what you can do is charge someone for a large when they ordered a medium. Or, you know, if you're doing something like wings where you pay by the wing, you know, I ordered a dozen wings and I charged you for 15. Those sorts of things are pretty easy to put in a system if the guest doesn't notice.
Charging for a call brand when they got a well drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So one thing is, now I don't know if I agree with this slide right here where it says cashiers rarely steal sums directly from the cash drawer because it's easily detected. You know, one of the first things I learned when I became the boss is that people are stupid. So, you know, Yeah, there are people who are going to steal directly from the drawer. It happens.
Bless their hearts.
But but those are the easy ones to catch. Okay, so it's like when it says it will happen, but those are the easy ones to catch. But what you want to look for, if you're smart, you're not going to just take money out of the cash register. You're going to do one of these other methods of misdirection when you're taking the money. And as a manager, what you're looking for is someone consistently over or short in their bank at the end of the night, because then if there is a mismatch, something is going on. And so it's probably either theft or carelessness. If it's carelessness, it can be trained. If it's theft, it's something you need to deal with. Both of them are something you need to deal with.
You know, with bars, I tend to see this type of problem a little bit more, where they could be running two different cash drawers, right? Where they may not be writing down or registering the drinks have been, charged if they know somebody's paying cash, and just have their own cash drawer. So they're sitting there, they're making the proper change, but they're doing that. Watching to see if the sales match up to how busy it was.
Right.
Like, wait, we had a slam night. That bar was hopping the entire time. You're busy, but somehow the sales were lower than the other night that was slow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, other threats. The void key. When it comes to voids and comps, the manager should be the only one or a supervisor is the only one that should be able to do it. Because, first of all, if I can put in an order, collect the money, then void it off and make it disappear, you're just asking for someone to steal. That's easy. Same thing with a comp is if I can give something away to a guest for free and collect the money, so there's no record or it says that it was complimentary, or if I can give something and as a comp and so that I can collect a bigger tip. It's like if the bartender example again, or a dessert, the server says, hey, let me get you a free dessert. You're more likely to leave them a bigger tip. Exactly. And so their incentive is to get a big tip. So that ability to void or do comps for things should just be left to manager. The manager should be the only one that's able to do that.
Yeah, there should be a check and balance system involved here.
Yeah. And it's important to keep in mind that if you get two employees working together, it becomes a lot more difficult. I was working in a national park, and we had a situation where a cook, a butcher, and a storeroom person were all conspiring together. They had a party. And so for the party, they stole a case of buffalo tenderloin.
Oh,
now,
nice.
The only reason they were caught is because this was a $1,300 box of meat that they stole. If it had been less,
that took some brass ones right there.
Well, that's the thing. They were stupid. I don't think they realized how expensive this was, but buffalo tenderloin, not cheap to come by. And so what had happened was the cook placed the order, the butcher made it, and the guy in the storeroom issued it. Well, between the three of them, they were able to destroy since they were working together, they could destroy the paperwork. There was no record of it being ordered. There's no record of it being issued. Yeah. And the person they issued it to, the butcher, he said, well, I never received it. And, so down the line, there was no record of it. The only way it was caught was because $1,300 went missing. And it's like, that was enough to trigger, hey, something's wrong here.
Yeah. That's when you're starting to call in somebody else to do some deep digging here.
Yeah, that was a felony.
Yeah.
And they were actually prosecuted for it.
Oh. Now, I've seen a box of steaks walk out the back door because that's a problem. If you don't have, I hate to say security system, but the cameras on employees as well, the back doors when people are taking out trash is a good time when things go walking out. So, bonding.
Yeah, so bonding, this is one of the protections that we use to deal with this, is basically an external agency has done a background check on your employee and said, you know what, they're not a risk, we're willing to insure them. And so if they do steal something, we will repay you. And so bonding is a way, now you have to pay for this service, but it's basically saying someone externally saying this employee is extra trustworthy, and if they're not, we'll repay you.
Yeah. Now, this is one of those things, just like any insurance, where you're sitting there and you're like, I'm paying this, but once you need it, you're thankful that you had it.
Yeah.
And that might be one of your managers too. If you're the owner, and you're not there to sit there and watch your operation carefully. Recently, my brother, I told him the security on the employees more than the guests, and he didn't listen, and the managers just robbed him blind, and it happens.
So Matt, we're going to have to pick up the pace here. We are 20 slides in at 45 minutes.
Oh,
we got 21 more to go. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little here.
All right.
It's not your fault. This is me.
That's all right. I'm sure the students are enjoying talking about bonding.
Yeah. So here's some common means of theft by employees. You can go through and read these.
Oh man, I love those homemade coupons that we give out to all of our friends, right?
Yeah.
Coupons, that's a huge one, because all they have to do is just hand it off to them.
Right.
Like, here, this is normally $5, but here's a coupon. Give me 3 and you can have it.
Right.
So
here are the guidelines for how to deal with theft by employees, or try to keep it minimum. Require a written check. Have a check for every transaction. Every check should have a unique number. Do the pre-check, post-check. Don't allow your employees to share passwords on the point-of-sale system. Close out all your open checks. Pay attention to the overage and underage. Again, voids should only be done by supervisors. Don't allow cashiers to access to cash value coupons.
Oh, who would think, huh? Who knew?
Yeah. Develop your system of how you're going to check this to make sure that it works, and then bond your employees.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. So what's next? Some more on revenue security. So what we're concerned with revenue security is that we're going to verify how much is issued. We're going to verify how much the guest is charged. We're going to verify that there's a receipt for it. We're going to verify that that amount of money ends up in the bank, and then we're going to verify that the bills are paid.
Yeah, we just want to make sure our credits equal our debits.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So in the ideal world here, it says that all this would happen automatically. And a good point of sale system does help with that a lot. Because, from the moment that it is ordered, a good point of sale system can be tied into your inventory system. So it indicates in the inventory system that item is now gone. And that can, in a sophisticated one, it's automatically reordered. But it's not perfect. And, anytime there's a human interaction, there's potential for theft.
Yeah. Well, Robbie, I personally don't want to buy or sell anything bought or sold, or sell anything sold or bought, or process anything that's going to be sold or bought. But if I do, the POS system really does help streamline all this stuff. Yeah. So if you happen to have a food and beverage operation in a hotel, it's important that the same POS system can link up, especially if it's run by the hotel, to help reduce any confusion. Yeah. Sorry.
So here's what this is the rule right here that I just went over. You just want to like Dr. Mosley said, make sure that your
credits and debits, they match up.
Credits and debits. I'm getting old.
Yeah. So if you have a debit in your product and issue, you're going to have a credit in your check guest charges, and then you're going to have a debit there, and you're going to have a credit in the sales, and and it's just going to go on, but it's going to be even on both sides of the ledger. And that's what's most important. And when you get your ledger and it prints off and it says the two balances and one's just a little bit lower, it makes it easier for you to sit there and go find where your discrepancy is.
Yeah. Let's see. So if we're going to talk about what happens in the kitchen first. So no product should be issued unless there's a record. So like I said, as a cook, I don't make you anything if I don't have a ticket.
You know, I know plenty of cooks that have records. Oh, wait, I mean, but yeah, seriously, if there isn't a formal thing, you can't just have the bar run to the kitchen and be like, hey, I need lemons right now, right? There needs to be a system, because they're taking now all of a sudden from your inventory and moving it to theirs, right? It may seem small, but keeping track of all these little things, even garnish, is going to add up later.
Yeah. So it's just nothing goes out without, nothing is issued without a request, that there's not a written record.
But it also means that you need to have it be as streamlined as possible to make these requests, so it's not that big of an issue to have it be done.
And then the next one is things that are issued, like if, things that go in from the storeroom to the kitchen should equal what the guests have been charged. Mm-hmm. So for every hamburger that is gone from the storeroom to the kitchen, there better be a check where it goes out to a guest.
Exactly.
So here's, I'll skip through this. It's just,
yeah, because I mean, this is from our era. Now you can see something like this if you go to maybe Twin Oaks. I don't know. They're not exactly high speed, low drag yet, or Gary Lee's Market, but it's got all the basic stuff on there that your electronic things are going to have: the table, the server, the guest, things that are ordered, price, tax and all that stuff breaking down. Sorry.
That's okay. So this is what you're going to see in your, this is a written or an analog version, but basically what your point of sale system is going to keep up with. And it's like the names or the numbers of the check, where it went, how many were used, or is anything missing? And so like, this is just keeping records of all the issues, all the product issues.
Yeah, and this is back when they would give you these checkbooks, and it would be numbered, so that way you could keep track. And that's why this is from. So if you no longer use that where you're at, or you just have the electronic keypad where you punch everything in, it's a little bit different, but it's still the same.
But this is why having access to the void key, only have your manager have access to the void key, because yes, this is back in the era when things were written on paper and now everything's electronic, but the void key is the magic erase button.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And all this disappears.
Yeah. So if you're a manager, you don't hand off your key or whatever that unlocks the ability for that void key willy-nilly.
Yeah. Then we want to verify our sales receipt. So this is the actual money that comes in should match what we issued to the guests. So all the tickets that come out of the kitchen, there should be some money that matches that amount.
That just is ridiculous. Why would we care about that, right? But
yeah.
Yes, the margins are already a little bit tight. So it's very important to make sure that you are getting the money that you deserve for the products and services that you gave out. Okay.
So you sit there at the end of the night and you count the money, and then you count the tickets, and they better match.
This was such a pain. I remember in the 90s sitting there trying to verify that things matched up. And if you had a missing ticket back then, it was not a simple matter. You were sitting there and you're just trying to find it. And, 2 hours later, it slid underneath the register by accident or whatever.
Yeah, but even now, even with the electronic, you want to sit there and count the drawer and make sure that you add it to the whatever you got in credit cards for the night, that those match your tickets.
Yep.
And I mean, that was usually my favorite part of the night, because I'm sitting in the bar with a drink, adding everything up at the end of the night.
Yeah, sometimes you just need that extra drink after you're done fixing the problem, but yeah, it is what it is.
I'm going to skip, here's the sales report. I'm going to skip through this. It's pretty
Well,
self-explanatory.
yeah, and that just pretty much just tells you what needs to add up to what. So,
yeah. So here, these are the ways that money goes from the guest to your operation. And each one of these represents a possibility for something to happen where, you need to pay attention. So a guest can pay a cashier. Okay. So they go up to physically pay the cashier. They could pay at the table where they pay in they pay there at the table and then it's taken up to the cashier. They could pay the server who carries it up to the cashier. And then the cashier, rings it up and the server brings the money back. They could pay the server who has already paid the cashier. Now, I've never actually encountered this system where the server pays in advance. Matt, have you?
well, now this is something that's a little bit more common with things like Uber Eats and stuff like that, isn't it? Isn't that
Yeah.
kind of the system that we're looking at now, where like they'll go pick it up and they have to pay for it, or it's already paid for by the guest, but they still have to sign with the driver and things like that. It gets a little muddled. And then, of course, the direct billing, that's more common in like hotels where you're
Right.
going to be like, put it on room 206, right?
Yeah. And so each one of these represents an opportunity for something to happen, and you just need to have policies and procedures in place.
Mm-hmm.
The term accounts receivable, if you see that is basically anything that hasn't been paid yet.
Yeah. Accounts receivable is money that is coming to you. Accounts payable is stuff that you got to pay off, such as your distributors and, electricity bill.
But accounts receivable, that's the stuff that you hadn't gotten yet that's due to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next step that we want to follow up with and make sure that we pay attention to is verification of the sales deposits. And this is basically you want to make sure that the amount of money that you say you're putting in the bank is the amount of money that's going in the bank.
What? Now this
and managers want to be the ones to do this. You don't have your employees say, oh, there's $2,000 in that bag. Here, sign this.
No, if you are putting your name or your signature on something, you better verify it yourself. I don't care, your employee may count their drawer at the end of the night, but guess who else is going to be counting that drawer? Yeah, you, right? Because if you're putting your name on it, you better make sure that you count it as well. So
yeah, because at the end of the day, if you're a manager, you still have a boss, and you can tell the boss, oh, well, this employee stole from me. But what the boss cares about is, how did they steal from you? Why did you let that happen? Why didn't you count it?
Yeah. How did you not catch this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Embezzlement.
Oh man, nothing like a little white collar crime to start the day.
Tell us about embezzlement.
Embezzlement tends to be where an employee will take from the company the funds that they're entrusted to. And we still see this a lot in local news. If you read the newspaper, if anybody read it, I know you didn't. But somebody will be in charge of an account and they will just end up writing an extra check. Now that extra check may look official, like to a power company, but it's going to be for their power bill, not, the company's, or they may write an extra check, to themselves.
And if you're the owner, are you going to notice if you paid the power bill 13 times this year instead of 12?
Probably not. That's why having an accountant who will go over some of this stuff is kind of important too. Just hope it's not the one that's.
And what you don't want is a person who's auditing it, the accountant, to be the same person who's writing the check.
No, you can't have the person who's responsible for it be the person who verifies that they did a good job. So that's just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And anybody who gets offended that you're having an outside person verify that they do a good job might have some issues anyway. So
you want to make your bank deposits every day if possible. And this is as much of anything as a safety issue. You don't want to be a target. You don't want a large amount of money that people, on hand. And the person who's making the deposit should be bonded.
Well, exactly. And when you're doing this, you don't. I talk sometimes about making yourself a soft target, right? You don't always have the same exact routine, because people, they'll pay attention. Robbie and I just talked about, theft or robbery, and part of it is if an inside employee knows what's going on, it's easier to, take advantage.
If you have a dishwasher, maybe I shouldn't. You have someone who's working for you, and they know that they only make deposits on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and on Saturdays they have $7,000, as much as $7,000 or something.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, and they're at dinner with their family or something. They say, some on Saturday nights they got as much as $7,000 in the office. Now you're a target. You don't know who they're telling.
Yeah. They always go at 7:30 p.m. The guy drives a gray Honda. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, you should make it daily. It reduces the amount of cash that you're depositing each day, so you don't have that $7,000. You may have $1,000. Now that's still a lot of money, but if you do end up getting jacked at that point, at least it's not $7,000 that was taken from you.
And also, like if they know that you've got a lot of money, that's different from them not knowing. If they say it may be $200, it may be $5,000. Well, $200 isn't worth robbing you for, and they don't know when you're going to have a lot of money.
Exactly.
Yeah. You need to have policies for reconciliations where basically you compare what the bank says you did versus what you say you did.
Mm-hmm.
Banks make mistakes.
They're human.
Yeah. And so you just need to have a policy in place for them how to deal with that.
Yeah.
You should always look at your bank statements.
Yeah.
Just to check and make sure that things are what they're supposed to be. Change combinations on your safes.
Well, it's not just on your safes. A lot of people, the reason why they get their computer hacked, and I use air quotes on hacked because usually it's just because they're too dumb or lazy to come up with a decent password. They might write it down and put it on their monitor, or just not even change it from the standard password that was on the system or on the safe. And if somebody installs your safe, right, and they go through your safe combination, ask them how to change it, right? Have them show you, and then once they're gone, do it yourself and make sure that you can have it be something you can memorize. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing. Like the safes that people have at home, the default on most of them is 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you read about it, most people never change it. So if someone's going to rob you, you try the default.
Yeah, like look at that.
You should have your employees take vacations periodically. So this goes back to the case where we're talking about embezzlement. If you have one person who's handling the money, that's you're setting yourself up for a situation where you don't know. Hopefully your employees are honest. But if you have someone who knows that they're the only ones that handle the money, they're the only ones that look at the books,
mm-hmm.
you don't know. You don't know what they could be taking.
Having that checks and balance.
Yeah. Having someone else who periodically goes in there and does that.
Yeah, you trust your store clerk, right? The one who controls your inventory, but you're still going to do an inventory yourself, right?
Yeah.
To verify that what they said they have is what they have.
Yeah.
Okay. Trust but verify.
Yeah, trust but verify. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then you want to go
the receipts, make the
sales receipts match your deposits. How much that you say you have at the end of the night matches how much you're putting in the bank. Just make sure that it's the same. Let's see.
Oh, accounts payable. Hey, look, we got to pay the gas bill. We got to pay payroll, right? All that stuff, your vendors, anything that you have coming into your restaurant that you're going to end up selling or providing a service. I mean, that's what your employees are doing. They're providing a service for you, right?
Yeah. And
So,
again, you want to make sure that whoever is being paid, you want to make sure they're legitimate, because like I said earlier, it's possible. Would you notice if you had one extra power bill a year? Would you notice if there was, you've got 8 different food vendors? Would you notice if one month you had 9? Like,
well, and as Robbie said, anybody with a clipboard and looking serious walks in and hands you a bill. If your cashier or front desk clerk or whatever isn't trained to just be like, okay, well, the manager will have to verify this, right? And not just to pay out right then and there. I think this has changed a lot since our early days in the industry, though,
yeah.
thankfully.
Let's see. Let's see.
Oh, who knew that you had to have money to pay your bills? I mean, right? And that's part of the whole keeping your sales deposits match up with what you deposit, right? Your revenue versus what you actually deposit. Because if it doesn't match up, you're not going to have the money to pay the people that you owe, and you're going to get shut down.
And you want to make sure that if you say you're supposed to have it, you really have it.
Yeah. Again, trust but verify. Great.
And the longer you go without checking it, the bigger the potential is.
In 2020, there's no reason for you, even if you're the owner and you're in another state, to not be able to verify the computer what it says is going on, and to randomly spot check and see to make sure it got deposited in the bank.
Yeah.
Who knew?
From vendors. Now, hopefully, you're dealing with honest vendors and they wouldn't intentionally try and defraud you. But I mean,
well, this goes back to all the stuff we said about our own employees. Our own employees might try to defraud our customers. The vendors might try to defraud you.
Yeah, imagine you have Cisco Food is bringing in your food order, and you've got the driver has taken out 50 pounds of steak and put 50 pounds of hamburger in the box, and you sign off and say it's there, and you don't notice it for 2 weeks until you open that box, and it's not going to be you that opens the box. It's an hourly employee, and they don't know that it's supposed to be steak. It's, oh, well, here's hamburger, and pulls it out. And the driver from the food delivery guy has 50 pounds of steaks that he's been selling out of the back of his car now.
Or even a more simple one, you have 10 boxes of steaks and they just put 9 down there and hope you don't notice.
Right.
That's the important thing of training your employees who are receiving to not be distracted during that time. You have to have a relationship with your vendors that they come during a time that's not really busy, so that way the person receiving is not distracted.
Yeah, and so you have someone who's trained on how to receive, and they're available at that time, and you check the invoice and you check the order, and
they don't sign jack until it's been verified that whatever they ordered is there.
Yeah.
They shouldn't sign jack anyway. So
these are the same 5 steps. This is the whole slide has been these 5 steps. I'm not going to go over it, but these are you just make sure that the numbers match.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing is basically your point of sale system. A good one can help you manage this. I mean, you can do it by hand, but a good point of sale system will do a lot of this for you and make it easier.
Well, this brings up another point: backing up your system, right? Just because we have all this technology doesn't mean that you shouldn't be backing it up either to a cloud. I prefer to do it to multiple places. So if I have an important document, I will go, old school for us now, and I'll use a flash drive. I'll use cloud-based, whatever I need to do, but it needs to be secure, and it needs to be able so you can pull up, whether it's the day before or whatnot, records, so that way you're not impacted when the system crashes, because sooner or later it does.
All right, guys, that's it for revenue security.
Thank you, Dr. Roberson, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt, for coming in and helping.
Yeah. Y'all be good.
All right. Talk to you later, man.